Any ads heard during this episode that are not in our voice are placed by third-party agencies. They should not be considered the opinion of or to be endorsed by Hoosier Myths and Legends.
Welcome to another episode of the Hoosier Myths and Legends podcast.
I'm Rebecca Wilhelm.
I'm Mary Quigley.
And I'm Hope Wilhelm.
Join us as we dive into the spookier side of the Hoosier state.
So what comes to your mind when you think of Indiana? Do you think of corn? Do you think of basketball? Do you think of the Indianapolis 500? Maybe you think of famous celebrities who were born in Indiana, like John Mellencamp or Michael Jackson.
But as the saying goes, there is more than corn in Indiana. 92 counties make up the Hoosier state. In this podcast, we are going to discuss some Indiana folklore from each of these counties. If you are into tall tales, ghosts, or spooky legends, then this is a podcast you are not going to want to miss. The episode we have for you today is not specific to one Indiana county. Instead, we bring you 3 Hoosier libraries that many believe to be haunted.
Imagine that you're stepping into the historic Willard Library in Evansville when you see a lady in all gray quietly roaming the aisles. The air is thick with mystery as you realize she has disappeared, and this sends a shiver down your spine. Next, picture wandering through the Bartholomew County Library in Columbus, where you suddenly hear a faint rustling, only to see books flying off the shelves, seemingly all by themselves. Finally, envision that you are an employee of the Indiana State Library in Indianapolis. As you navigate the dimly lit stacks, you can sense an ominous presence lurking just out of your sight. Every step you take feels heavy, and every shadow you see feels menacing. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back and relax as we delve into these eerie tales and ghostly legends that haunt these historic Indiana libraries.
We are going to start today's episode with the legend of the Gray Lady Ghost of Willard Library in Evansville, Indiana, which is one of the most famous and well-known ghostly legends in the state of Indiana.
I think so too, Mary, and this is a tale I have to admit that I've always been fascinated with.
Now, I have to admit to our listeners that I haven't been to the Willard Library.
Now, I have driven past this building, but it was after hours, so I have not been inside either, and it's something I think we should take a road trip and do.
The Willard Library is a historic Gothic revival structure built in 1885, and it has long been the home of the mysterious apparition that they call the Gray Lady. The library even has ghost cams set up where you can watch and see if you spot her.
Yes, and we will be sure to post a link in our show notes, but if you do a Google search, you can find the cameras.
It's really neat. They have several cameras set up that show different locations in the library.
Yeah, the locations include the children's room, the basement hall, the research room, the stairway, the children's story room, and of course, adult services.
Now, I have to admit that Becky and I sat and watched the cameras for a little while to see if we saw anything.
Spoiler alert, we didn't, but it was still so much fun.
So let's go ahead and get into the tale.
The Gray Lady got her name because of her distinctive gray attire. Now, she's been cited by the library staff, visitors, and even ghost hunters for over a century now. And she is often described as a spectral figure draped in a long flowing gray dress with a somber and ethereal presence. The first recorded sighting dates back to the 1930s when a janitor encountered her in the basement. And since then, her appearances have become part of the library's eerie lore.
Over the years, many people have reported a variety of strange occurrences associated with the Gray Lady. These include books inexplicably moving on their own, faucets turning on and off by themselves, and cold spots. She has been seen throughout the library, but sightings are most common in the basement, the children's room, and near the restrooms.
The Gray Lady, while spooky to see, has not been reported to be a bad spirit. People say she's benign, and witnesses describe her as being, non-threatening.
No one really knows who the Gray Lady is for sure. Many believe she could be Louise Carpenter, the daughter of Willard Carpenter, the library's founder. Louise is said to have contested her father's will.
So some people believe that Louise is hanging around because she felt like she was not treated fairly in her father's estate plans.
Naturally, this legend has attracted a lot of attention, not only in Indiana, but all over the world.
And there have been paranormal investigators and visitors who are just curious about the history and legend.
I think this is one legend that people can enjoy whether they're a skeptic or a believer in the paranormal.
I agree, Mary, and I think this legend just adds a layer of mystery to such a historic building.
If you check out their ghost cams and catch a glimpse of something, be sure to let us know.
And our next tale comes from Columbus, Indiana.
The Bartholomew County Public Library in Columbus, Indiana is known for its modern architecture and extensive collection, but it also has a reputation for being haunted.
This welcoming library was built in 1969, has a very modern design. The library is also known for some very unexplained phenomena.
One of the most common occurrences reported at the library is the inexplicable movement of books. In our research, we came across the Paraholics website.
Yeah, this website's a blog by paranormal investigator Matthew Jackson, and he has conducted a lot of really neat investigations,
including an investigation on the Bartholomew Public Library. We'll be sure to post a link to his blog because it's really interesting.
And we're actually going to read to you from his blog the 2 incidents that caused him to investigate this library.
From his blog, quote, "The first report came from children's programming librarian Kate Graffelman. On 2 separate occasions, she had books unexpectedly fall on her while researching local history and genealogy in the library's Indiana room. The first incident occurred about 1.5 years ago when the Indiana room was on the main level. The second happened earlier this year after the room had been moved upstairs to the mezzanine. In both cases, the books were not sticking out precariously from the shelves. They simply seemed to dislodge and fall onto Kate as she was working. I found this particularly puzzling for an experienced librarian, as they are typically adept to navigating the shelves without incident."
The second report came from children's librarian Rachel Ackerman. Back in October of 2019, she was covering a program in the library's Red Room when she noticed the clock hands on the wall suddenly begin spinning rapidly as if someone was quickly winding it. Rachel managed to capture the video of the clock going through an entire 12-hour cycle before abruptly stopping. Understandably unnerved, she decided to call a colleague to help her pack up.
I can see why these would grab your attention.
I can too. Very creepy, especially the clock hands. We will be back after a short break to discuss possible reasons and what Matthew Jackson found in his investigation.
We're back, so let's go ahead and get into some of the history of the building.
So this current library we know today was built in 1969, as we stated before. However, the property has a much longer history than that.
So according to Matthew Jackson's blog, there were actually 2 other buildings where the Bartholomew County Public Library now stands today.
Yes, and I think it's very interesting. One of the buildings was another library known as the Carnegie Library, and that building was dedicated in 1903. Other building next door, originally there, was the Tabernacle Christian Church, and that was built in 1911.
Now, eventually the city of Columbus tore both of these structures down so that the current library could be built.
Now, there is also a record of a body of a man and a dog that was found on the property next door, which was known as the Irwin home.
Apparently, according to an article in the Evening Republican on December 7, 1912, while digging a well on the property, a skeleton was found. The article assumed that it was probably a Native American.
When paranormal investigators conducted their search of the building, they captured some EVPs. Now, most of these seem to not really be responses to anything.
For me, the most interesting was Matthew Jackson saying that one of the EVPs said, "I worked here."
Yes, and that makes me think that the activity could definitely be related to either the library, like it could be somebody even from the 60s, 70s, or somebody from the Carnegie Library.
The last legend we have for you today concerns the Indiana State Library. In our research, we came upon an article in the Weekly View written by Indiana author Al Hunter. The article is titled, "Meet the Ghosts of the Indiana State Library."
The Indiana State Library is very, very old. So this library was established back in 1825, and the library was housed in various locations, mostly the Indiana State House.
Indiana's original state house was built in 1835. This building quickly became inadequate to a growing state government. In 1878, construction began on our current state house, which was completed in 1888.
Our state library began very modestly, often sharing space with other governmental functions. And I think this really reflects the limited resources and the small space that was available to the library in these early years.
As the library grew, it moved several times throughout the state house to accommodate its growing collection. Eventually, there was a need for a better structure.
Now, the library as we know it today was built in 1934, and it's done in the Art Deco style.
Most of the ghost lore associated with this structure concerns what is known as the stacks. The stacks area of a library typically refers to the sections where books and other materials are stored for public access or archival purposes. In the context of the Indiana State Library, the stacks area is reportedly a hotspot for paranormal activity.
Now, as a former librarian, this fascinates me. The stacks are a subterranean storage area beneath the library, and this area is located about 2.5 stories beneath the city of Indianapolis.
Some of the things that have been reported at the State Library are, of course, sightings of apparitions, lights flickering despite the lights being new. Books have also been known to move around on their own, and doors have been reported to open and close on their own.
And there is a paranormal group called Spirit Paranormal that investigated the library back in 2014, and the videos are really interesting. And we'll be sure to post a link to these videos so you can check them out.
Yes, in their investigation, they interviewed a past library employee who reported seeing a glimpse of someone walking ahead of them. The spirit is described as a man wearing a long black coat and hat. He is also described as being an older white man and having gray or white hair. He walks very quickly and disappears when you go around a corner.
Now, in the video, they talk about a few of the spirits that have been encountered at the Indiana State Library, and these include a woman who's seen in a long dress. She seems very busy, and many believe she is a past employee.
There is also a spirit who is seen wearing a white lab coat, who many believe may be the spirit of the artist who created the murals in the State Library.
Now, all of these strange occurrences have led many people to believe that there is something paranormal going on at the Indiana State Library.
I just want to go down in the stacks and see what's up.
I do too. I'd love to see what they have down there.
We'll be sure to leave a link to Al Hunter's article.
And there are also 2 YouTube videos out there by Stephen Smith of the Indiana State Library. And he did a presentation a while back about some of the ghost lore and the history. They're very interesting, and we're going to leave links to those for you as well.
Have you had any paranormal experiences at one of the libraries mentioned? Is there a haunted Indiana library you would like to hear us cover? We would love to hear about it. Please send us an email to HoosierMythsAndLegends@gmail.com or reach out to us on social media. We may use it in a later episode. In the email, let us know if you wish to remain anonymous.
To see our source material, please visit our website, HoosierMythsAndLegends.com. Please find us and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and now Twitter. Hoosier Myths and Legends is a Quigley Productions podcast.
Our theme song was written and recorded by Wet Blanket. The song title is Taxidermy Race Car.
As always, stay spooky.